Hey guys, thanks for your patience. I'm just sitting here laughing at all of the comments. We appreciate your patience with some of the technical difficulties that we had in getting everything going today. And thank you all for joining. I have a couple of really great guests today. I'll be bringing them in momentarily. But if you read the description for today's show, we are talking about art reps. And this is a show I've wanted to do for a while anyway, but we felt it was really timely with some recent news that came out. Some of you may have seen the Bleeding Cool article regarding a lawsuit in relation to Cadence. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about some things to look for, what to be careful of, and my guests today are just the best to have on for that. So let's go ahead and jump in. So today I have with me, I have Gamal and Jiggy. I know most of you have seen Jiggy many times, but maybe you haven't seen Gamal. Gamal, do you mind introducing yourselves to our audience today?
Absolutely. Hello, folks. My name is Gamal Hennessy. I am an attorney, author, and business consultant who specializes in the comic book industry and in the entertainment industry more broadly. I am also the attorney and counsel for comic art fans, so it's good to actually be here.
Thank you so much, Gamal, for joining us. And I know everyone knows Jiggy, but Jiggy, do a quick introduction in case there's one person who doesn't know who you are.
Hi, my name is Jiggy Cruz. I'm the art rep of nextcomicart.com. That's about it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And I'm sure you all know me, but I'm Tatiana. I'm the host of All Access Art. I'm CAF's director of events. And specifically related to today's show, I've been an art rep for almost 10 years. I've been a collector since I was a teenager. And my longtime boyfriend is a comic book artist. And so this topic is very near and dear to my heart. It brings up a lot of emotions and things for me. And so I thought that this would just be a great time to just talk through some things, give folks some information. I know I mentioned Cadence at the very beginning. If any of you aren't familiar with that, I just recommend going to Bleeding Cool. You can find the article really easily. And Gamal and I talked about this on the phone a few days ago, and I kind of wanted Gamal just to talk really briefly about your thoughts about that lawsuit and that situation.
Yeah, well, it's like I said when we were on the phone, it is fairly uncommon for comic book artists or comic book publishers or writers in general to actually go all the way to the point where they need to go to court in order to get some kind of relief for something that has happened to them. Normally, because profit margins are so thin in the comic book industry and the potential amounts of recovery compared to the amount you have to spend to actually go to court is usually so out of whack that it doesn't make any economic sense to go to court, even if you have been wronged by someone and you can prove that you are right in that situation. Lawsuits, no matter what state in the United States you do it in, is going to cost you $20, $30, $40,000, and you may lose. So in a lot of cases, comic book artists, comic book writers don't go to court. So if this many creators, this many artists actually got together and decided to go after Cadence, that means one, there's a lot of money on the table, and two, they think they have a very good case. Otherwise, just from a legal strategy point of view, they would not bother. I've had a lot of clients who they knew that their publisher screwed them over or somebody owed them money. And then when they went to look at the numbers, they realized it wasn't worth it and they had to walk away from that money. So this is it is a fairly unique situation, especially when you're talking about individual comic book artists. You're not talking about necessarily Action Lab or Aftershock or Heavy Metal or any of those companies who also had to be dragged into court, or like Diamond, who is still in court. But for the individual creator level, it's usually much more rare for someone to go to court, unless you're talking like Neil Gaiman and Todd McFarlane fighting things out, stuff like that.
Jiggy, what are your thoughts? Have you read the article?
Yeah, I remember it was during the first OAX when around the time when this happened,
Mhm.
and it was around San Diego Comic Con when they released the article somewhere at the time, and I actually talked to a previous member of Cadence, an artist, and this artist was telling me that compared to the others, this artist didn't have it that bad, but this artist was happy that many of them went in with the lawsuit, and I felt bad for those artists who lost a lot from this
Mhm.
whole thing.
Yeah, I think that to Gamal's point, I think a big part of how they were able to do the lawsuit was the 17 of them banding together. Um, Obviously, these are all allegations. There hasn't nothing's happened with any of that yet, so these are just allegations at this point. But from a CAF perspective, I was talking with Bill and Kazra about this last week when we were talking through the idea of having the show. And we just wanted to say from a CAF perspective that we are really proud of these artists for putting this together. I know I've seen a lot of situations with artists where they've wanted to sue or they've wanted to take legal action and were unable to for a lot of the reasons that Gamal mentioned. So we're really glad to see that they are protecting themselves. And we're hoping that, after we're done talking today, that people in the chat or people who watch this video later, whether you are an artist or a collector, that you just feel, a little bit more prepared and you know what types of things to look out for. So, we wish everybody the best in that situation. Really sad to see that it came to that. That really sucks. We never want to see that happen. But hopefully things will be worked out in the end from that.
Tatiana, can I say something that might actually be helpful to anyone who feels like they're in that position or finds themselves in that
Mm-hmm.
position later on? One of the ways that you can actually, from a court perspective, one of the ways you can get around the idea of a court case costs too much, so I can't get the money that is owed to me, is to look into going into small claims court. The reason why that's helpful is because the barrier of entry to actually get in the door and get things started is much lower. So you don't need to hire a litigation attorney. You don't necessarily need to spend the thousands and thousands of dollars to actually get your case in front of someone who can actually get your money recovered. If anyone needs that kind of service, I do know um, attorneys who specialize in small claims work. So I can actually put you in touch with them, and it doesn't really make a difference what state you're in for this person to help you, because they can actually put you in a position to get you where you can actually go and file that small claims case. Again, it depends on how much you're owed. If you're owed between, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, then that option does make sense. So it's not like a all or nothing situation when it comes to that kind of litigation. So if like I said, if you are in a position where you think someone might owe you money and you need to get an accounting from that organization, or you need to do an audit, or you need to go to small claims, we can put my contact information somewhere so that people can reach out and I can get you the resources that might help.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, all of Gamal's information, some of it was in the preview for the video, but we will make sure all of that information is in there so that you can reach out to ask him that. I have a question on that, Gamal. If, let's say, I know that the amount can vary depending on where you are, but let's say somebody owes me, whether I'm a collector or an artist, doesn't matter. Let's say somebody owes me and it's more than the amount that I can get in small claims. Let's say it's $15,000. Is it, am I stuck in that position, or can you go to small claims for a lower amount than the actual?
I believe it depends specifically on the state. And keep in mind, I'm not a litigation attorney, and therefore I cannot speak to this accurately. But if you just ask for what the threshold amount is, then you might be able to get relief up to that amount that you're owed. So let's say in a certain state, it's only, you could go to small claims court if you're owed $5,000 and you're owed 15. Well, if it's going to cost you 20 to go to a civil case for your $15,000, you're going to lose $5,000. If you go for $5,000, you might lose the other 10 because you can't do it in that court, but you can at least get the 5 and you're not losing $5,000. So at that point, I know I'm talking a lot about the money and economics of it, but lawsuits and taking legal action actually costs money. So in a lot of times, it's an economic analysis as much as it is a legal analysis, where you're going to go and what you're going to do. So like you said, if you're owed 15, just ask for the 5, because then you could at least get in the door and have a hope to recover the 5.
Thank you for that answer. That's really helpful. I know that sometimes, I know for me personally, I can get stuck in that, well, it's too much, so don't bother. So that's really helpful for me to know. And I know from personal experience, it was not art, it was a camera, but I went to a restaurant many years ago and I had brought, a camera. I was just out of college, so that mattered. And the restaurant broke my camera and they were going to pay for it and then they didn't. And so I learned about the small claims process and actually only had to go through the first step, which was sending a demand letter. And which is kind of that first legal step. And it was in California at the time. So they have a website you can use. And I was able to get my money back that way without even having to take them to small claims court. But it is really daunting when you don't know. So that's really, really helpful information. I would highly encourage anyone in a position who would want that information to please reach out to Gamal. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what people can do to prevent that. Let's try to not get people in financial deficits and lawsuit situations. So the first thing is, I've had people ask me, well, should I work with a rep, whether this is a collector or an artist? Should I work with a rep? I'm not sure who to trust, and what should I do? And historically in this industry, it has been a 100% trust kind of a situation. People tended to be, repped by a friend, and then then the next artist came along because they were friends with that artist, and those types of things happen. And we're starting to see some changes in that. But at the end of the day, trust is still a big part of art repping. I think it's always going to be. But if somebody's considering working with an art rep, Gamal, what can they do to kind of protect themselves legally, or what types of things should they be looking for from a legal perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm going to focus primarily on what the artists can do, and we can talk about what the actual collectors can do a little bit later. But there's 3 stages that you can actually do something as an artist with regard to your representation. You can do something before there's a problem, while there's a problem, or after there's a problem. There's really no other places in the timeline that you can do it. The best place to actually solve the problem is before there is a problem. So if you're considering working with an art rep, or working with an agent, or working with a manager, or anything like that, the first step is due diligence, to figure out what their reputation is in the industry, who they've worked for, who they've worked with, and what their experience has been. When I'm doing due diligence, when I suggest that my clients do due diligence, I do not suggest that I ask the rep for references, because nothing is more useless than asking someone, give me the names of 3 people who think you're not a crook, because they'll just give you 3 people, whether those people worked with them or not. I would find out who they repped before, and then reach out to them independently at random to try to find out what it is the experience was like to work with them. Because I'm pretty sure, like if you're looking at the Cadence situation, all of those people did not sign up with Cadence at the same time. Some of them were there longer than others, and if somebody just reached out, whether it was on a forum or on a Discord or at a bar at San Diego Comic-Con, you could ask these questions and get answers that would actually help you determine who you should and should not be working with. The other way you can actually deal with the situation beforehand is what I like to refer to when I talk to my clients as a danger room situation. For all of those, you're all probably familiar with the danger room because you're all read X-Men, but I will explain it for the sake of the recording. Instead of giving, like in the Cadence situation, for an artist to give all of this original artwork to a specific rep and then have that rep go out and allegedly sell the artwork, give them a few pieces and give them a certain period of time to actually do it. One of two things will happen. Either they will A, sell the work and give you your money, or they won't. But if you only gave them a few pieces, then it's not a catastrophic situation if they all of a sudden vanish and you never hear from them again. They have simply failed the danger room exercise, and you can go off and find another rep. The third thing is in the contract itself that you have with your art rep. I understand that a lot of these relationships are based on trust and based on pre-existing relationships and friends of friends. And if there's one thing that you walk away from, if you've been in comics long enough from a legal capacity, is that you need a piece of paper that both sides have signed so that everyone knows what is expected of them, what it is who's supposed to get paid what, when, and how, and what happens if that doesn't occur. If you don't have any due diligence, if you don't have any, you don't test them out and you don't have an agreement, you will then go into the situation where there's a problem. If there's a problem, we were talking about before, during, and after. You're now in the during phase. If there's a problem in the contract, there should be two specific clauses that lay out what's supposed to happen. One is the accounting clause, which says at a certain period of time, you have to let me know what you sold, what you didn't sell, how much money you made, how much money I'm supposed to get, and where is my money. And if that clause is there and they don't pay, then they've breached the contract and you can then terminate. It makes it much easier to do that when there's contract involved. The other clause is what's called the audit clause. If they're supposed to send you documentation that shows what was sold and how much money you're supposed to get, and they don't do it, or you get the piece of paper and it looks like none of this actually makes sense, you have the right to go into their accounting records with a certified public accountant and then basically look at everything they sold of yours and how much money you're supposed to get. And if you don't get your money, then they have to give you your money. Sometimes they have to pay a penalty on top of it, and they have to pay for the audit, and Bob's your uncle. You go about your business. After, if you don't have any you didn't do the due diligence, you didn't do the danger room thing, you didn't have a contract, there is no accounting clause, there is no audit clause, then you're in the situation that the artists are in with Cadence. You now have to decide, is it worth the money to actually go and sue them? I apologize for the long answer, but it's kind of a long answer.
Well, I'm sure that's the short version. It could have been a lot longer if you really want.
It could, yes.
I have some thoughts, but Jiggy, I want to get your thoughts first on some of the stuff Gamal has said and what kind of things are important to you and what you think.
As a collector myself, I check on the artist first, if they're represented or they're not. And if they are represented, usually artists will put their in their social media the website where you can get the art from. Then I check on Comic Art Fans if this artist has sold X number of pieces of art. Then if I see other people posting about it, and some of them are my friends, I'd ask about the experience in buying art. But in I think with today's technology versus compared to 15 years ago, it's really much more different. You can send direct messages or even call them via the internet, and that helps a lot. To Gamal's point, that you do your due diligence also if you're starting out as a collector. As an artist, um, for the artists in my team who joined me, I found out that they asked the other artists also how it is working with me, and they also asked the local comic shop owner who knows me very well also. So those are the things that I suggest you do also if you're either an artist or a collector starting out in the hobby, that you ask around first before um, buying something. And usually in comic art fans, if you see a piece of art that you like and you don't know the owner, you can always send them a message via the website, and usually these people are going to reply. It's a good community, so there you go.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. I think that another thing that artists should look at is it's not always about, like, there's of course the protecting yourself piece, but there's also the consideration of what is it that you're looking for in an art rep, and what is it that that rep provides. I have a few really great friends who talk to me about repping them over the years who I don't rep because we just weren't a good fit. What they were looking for isn't what I provided, vice versa, and that's okay. And I think that part of it in the industry is getting past the worry about communication. I think a lot of people struggle with, well, what if the conversation's not easy and I should just say yes and then just move on, and I've said yes and I'm stuck there forever. And you should never feel that way, whether you are the rep or the artist or the collector. Know that communication is really important, and it's okay for things to move around. I have an artist I rep now who a friend of mine used to rep, and we talked, and it ended up being a better fit for the artist to come to work with me. Nobody's feelings were hurt, and that was perfectly fine. So that's another layer, I think, too, is look at what is it that you need. So I know Jiggy and I are similar in a lot of ways. We do a lot of promotion. We think outside the box. We do like themed drops for our artists. Other, I've been doing like art books and stuff with my artists, like trying to find other ways to find avenues for them. Maybe that's something you want, or maybe that's something you don't. And so just finding those types of things. Does the rep have a website? And those types of pieces to see if it's going to work for you. And then I think one of the things that you both touched on a lot is transparency. To me, that's number one. If anybody, I go over everything with my artists, but if anybody ever has a question, I'm more than happy to. Here's all the numbers. If you want to see the PayPal payments, because of the fees, right? It can make the math weird. I'm happy to share everything. And if somebody is not happy to share with you, that can be a red flag, right? Why is it that they don't want to share that with you? Mm-hmm. So I know that transparency is a big piece of it too. Sorry, my brain is processing slow at the moment. After Gamal and I talked last week, with all of my artists, I've talked through things with them. I send an email about this is how things work with me and going back and forth. But I don't have actual signed contracts in place. And I emailed all my artists last night to invite them to come on the show. And then I also said, and, be on the lookout we're going to be doing this soon. So, because it protects everybody. So I know that we have some people in the chat who also are on the repping side. Just keep in mind that having a contract protects everyone. It's as long as you are meeting the intention of the contract and you are doing things the way you should be doing them, it is there to protect you as well. And I would say, same things for, collectors with the when you are working with a rep that you know has all of these standards and things in place, that's much more likely to carry over with collectors as well. So now Joe Weems and Marco Gali are talking to each other in the chat. It's like, Joe is my boyfriend. And I told him, and he says, I don't need to be in the chat. I'm in the next room. And I said, yeah, but you can't participate. So he's now in the chat. All right. So the next area that we wanted to talk about was like things to avoid or red flags. So I'm going to start with Jiggy this time. Jiggy, what do you think? What are some things you've seen that you're like, oh, that's a red flag?
Yeah, so I don't want to say anything bad or something that will get me in trouble, but from experience, I bought stuff from Cadence before, and when I was passed on to the assistants, and then the assistants didn't know where the art was, I kind of had second thoughts already. But since I knew the assistants and I added them on Facebook and we'd message one another, and they've delivered before, I still had that trust in those two guys, and I did eventually get the art. But it was the hard part was they didn't know where the art was, so it was with the rep at the time, but they delivered. So that's a sign. I had an experience wherein the rep said, "Oh, this is I reserved it for you already," and then when I was about to pay, someone else got it. Like, what happened? Didn't buy from that rep after that experience. So I think you, as in my experience also as a rep, if collector A and myself and the artist already had an agreement, and then collector B comes in with a higher offer, I have to tell the artist, like, look, we already said yes to collector A, so we need to uphold this agreement and all that stuff. So it's about it's maintaining the trust with collectors, who in turn, like, if you do a good job with everything, they eventually become friends also.
Yeah, absolutely. I have had a lot of times where I've put a piece of art up and it sells immediately, and then somebody else says, well, but I'll pay you more than you were asking. And I always, I appreciate people offering more, but if I agreed to somebody, you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to back off from that. It's the person who got it first. Even if they need a long payment plan, if I already agreed to it, I already agreed to it. That's an integrity thing, right? Like that feels like that's a big integrity thing. And I've been on both sides of that. So I completely understand that piece. I just wanted to, there's some people in the chat talking about certain situations and certain reps. We're trying to talk generally as much as possible, because we're certainly not here to just talk bad about certain reps. Everybody's had different situations. We're not here to judge anybody. It's not appropriate, first of all, and secondly, that's certainly not the intention of today's show. So if there are certain situations that you believe Jiggy or other people have been in that you want to talk with them about, you're more than welcome to talk with them about it at OAX in February, at the show, in private. So Kamal, what do you think? Red flags?
Well, if it goes back to understanding what the rep's process is. And you guys touched on a certain aspect of that process, like the piece will go to the first bid. That is a part of the process that makes sense. But if you know that this art rep posts at a certain time, they leave the auction up for a certain time. Once that auction is closed, they make it very clear that the auction is closed. They make it very clear about how the money is going to get paid, how soon after the money gets paid they're going to ship out the piece. They actually confirm that the piece has been shipped out. You get the tracking number that the piece has been shipped out. That is a process that shows that you can actually work with that rep, because they have, just being a professional in any kind of industry just means that you have a process that is efficient and makes sense for that business. If you make a bid on a piece and then the assistant doesn't know where the piece is, or you get told that the piece got sold but to somebody else afterward, or things like that, that just shows that it's not a process. They're just swinging in the dark, and they're scrambling to get as much money as they can, as fast as they can, which is indicative of a fly-by-night service. Somebody who's just going to disappear in the middle of the night because they just want as much money as they can get. Someone who, if a company has a process, if a rep has a process, then it is much more likely they're in it for the long haul, especially if you have to sign the contract, or, you know, this is probably not something that is very common in the space. But if the money goes in escrow, then you know that the rep and the artist aren't going to get their money until you get your art piece, because then the money gets freed from the escrow. Then you're golden, because you know that no one's running off with anything, because there is no money to run off with yet. That's probably like the far extreme of that kind of process. And again, if you have that kind of process, that process is cost money. So if they have that kind of process, it's going to be built into the price of the thing you may be buying. But security has a price, and security makes everybody feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to bring up. The money part of it is big, right? For a lot of, I would say, collectors in particular. If you're working with somebody who absolutely insists on a form of payment that has no recourse, and they're not somebody you know and trust, that can be a red flag. Because that's built in, right? When you're using your credit card for something, or when you're using, a service like PayPal or Square or something like that. But like Gamal mentioned, it costs money. So if somebody says to you, if you want to pay this way with fees, here's the total. If you want a discount, it's here. Friends and family, but only if you feel comfortable, then they're giving you the option. Then you just decide, what's important for you. I have some clients I've known for years. They still want to pay goods and services, and they want an invoice, and I have no problem with that. My standard is just sending an invoice. People pay with a trackable payment that's protected, and it's up to them. I know some people who insist on always paying friends and family because they don't want me to get any fees taken out. And, that I always appreciate it, but I certainly never require it. And if somebody requires it, you might want to, be careful about that. Just know that sometimes you might need to pay extra if you want something in escrow, or if you, say if the fee or if the price they have is essentially this is the amount that needs to show up in my bank amount, that you may have to pay a little bit extra for the that coverage. And again, a lot of it is a trust issue. A lot of it is trust. So one of the things I talk about as a rep is, from the collector standpoint, a lot of collectors are concerned if they get a commission, what if the commission never gets done, right? That's probably the biggest concern with collectors. What if I get a commission and the commission never gets done? And I always guarantee them. And if anything ever happens, I tell people, well, I'm escrowing the money and here's your money back. That being said, I'm also not a bank. So if somebody says, well, I don't feel comfortable putting the money in there, can we work with this third party, well-known banking service? I would have no problem with that whatsoever, because I want everyone in the situation to feel comfortable. Right?
Go
ahead.
Well, there's a method, because in a lot of cases, publishers and writers and artists, when they're putting together comics, there's also, especially because everyone in the comic book industry is geographically dispersed in many situations, you don't want to set up a situation where a writer hires an artist to like make a, let's say, a 24-page comic, sends all the money, and then never hears from the artist again. So the solution that I've come up with my clients is something I refer to as the tennis method. It's very simple. You hire me to do your artwork, you pay me 25% of what that total fee would be. When the contract gets signed, I then send you the character designs and the rough pencils. Once you approve them, you send me another 25%. I should send you the Titan pencils, no color, no text. You send me 75%, and then when I send you the final pages, you send me the last 25%. If you do that kind of back and forth tennis method, then each side is a little bit more invested in the process, but nobody's given up everything all at once. Because by the same token, you don't want, as an artist, to do a commission and then send the commission and then never get paid. This way, you can, once you agree on the commission, you could get part of the money. Then if you do a rough sketch of whatever it is, you get a cut, and then when you actually deliver when the final piece is delivered, you get the last piece. That can help solve that problem where neither side wants to kind of give everything all at once.
Absolutely. I just put Nick's comment here. Contract milestones with associated payment schedule.
Yes, that is the more elaborate and refined way of just saying it. But when I say tennis method, people just think of a tennis ball and they remember it. So
no, that absolutely makes sense. I love that. I love that analogy. And different businesses do it in different ways. The thing that I like about it is that you're minimizing your exposure, and that's for everybody. And so that way, worst case scenario, if it doesn't get done, the most you're possibly out is just that portion.
Yes, the 25%, the initial 25%, which is the incentive for the artist to get started. If they run away with that, then they just left 75% of the fee on the table. So in addition to not having a good work ethic, they don't really know math. But,
and they burned that bridge, right? They've burned that bridge forever. I mean, it's not any different than any other job, right? If you have just a regular job that you get paid for an hourly rate or salary, it doesn't matter. You don't get hired for the job and they give you your whole year's salary up front. I mean, imagine how hard a lot of people would work if that's how it was, But also they don't wait all the way till the end to pay you either, because they know that you can't work for that whole year and then just get paid at the end. So it's not too different from that type of a format. I had a good question in here that somebody brought up. So I heard that some artists can take months or even years to complete a commission. How do you navigate timelines between the artist and buyer? So I'd like Jiggy to answer first, and then I will answer with how I handle it, because there's a lot of different ways to do it. So
so I'll share my experience. I know Creative Keep with regard to commissions. Like, as a collector, there was a piece I was waiting on for 2.5 years, but I did get it, and I trusted the art rep. I would message the art rep what the status was, and the art rep would let me know what was happening. And the artist was busy with several things, but offered the refund. And like, nope, I'm gonna wait for the commission. As an art rep, artists have different personalities. Not everyone has the same fit, but most of them are introverts. Like most, some are with the rare artists that are extroverts. There are some, and what I've learned throughout the years is that artists can be very moody. Like, I'm not in the mood to draw this one now. Like, if I open a commission list, it doesn't mean that the first guy would be the first commission to be done.
Yeah.
It really depends on what the artist feels at that time.
Yeah, they all bounce around. They all do that, guys. They all do it. 99% of them.
Yeah. But I have to check on the artists from time to time, like what's up, what's going on with life and all that, because I need to let the commissioner or the collector know about the situation. And I think the important thing is to make everyone feel safe and comfy, that the money is safe, that the commission is safe, or you can get the refund if doesn't happen. And sometimes artists will say that, like, Jiggy, I'm going through some stuff and I don't know if I can finish it at this time. Please offer a refund if this collector wants. I would also like to answer Jason's serious question. Do
Yes,
you think
I had that
artists
one
should
started too.
and make deadlines with commissions? Jason, this was done this year. I talked to some of my artists who would take more than the usual, and I would ask for them a completion time. If they commit at this time, I'll let the collector know. But like a weeks before the time, I have to check on the status just to make sure that are we still good with this deadline. If not, I need to let the collector know because this is what we committed. So it's like a communication thing with both artist and collector. And from experience, what I do at times is I don't want to overpromise. So sometimes I like I know this artist is not gonna finish it this time. I'll put some space just for myself with a collector. But yeah, with regard to working with the artists for a number of years now, you get a sense on how they work, and you get to feel, okay, this artist will finish it this time.
Yeah, I think these are great questions. I really appreciate them. I think that you and I handle things in a similar way. Um, Generally speaking, the way I set commissions with clients is that things don't have a really specific deadline unless it's something we've agreed upon up front. So there was a pretty big commission that two of my artists worked on together this year for a client. He and I talked initially at OA Expo, and it was a gift. It was like a birthday gift, so it needed to be done um, no later than September, preferred during the summer. And he got it about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so in that situation, it was, it's a plenty big deadline, but we need it for something in particular. So it was prioritized for that. I think one of the industry things that people have always talked about is, well, I'll take these commissions, but, published work comes first. And to me, I think the answer to that is yes and no. Yes, sometimes your intention of doing a piece might get pushed a little bit because you got called by the publisher and they need you to do X, Y, and Z. But the communication piece of that, and then still prioritizing it as much as you can, I think makes a really big difference. So an example of an artist I work with who's just really good at balancing all that stuff out is Jason Johnson. He's really professional. He's very timely with things. Sometimes he gets commissions done in like a week. But whenever people ask me, how long should I expect this to take? I'll tell them, usually it's a few months. It could be up to 6. I will tell them that just to give them a nice window, because there have been times when Jason's gotten back-to-back published work. But that being said, even within that, if Jason gets slammed with published work, he tells me. And then so I can go and tell those clients, I just want you to know you are not forgotten. This is what's going on. This is the priority of what he's working on at the moment. It should still be done within that time period. I just wanted to make sure you were aware. And so for me, the biggest thing is the communication piece. I generally don't set really specific dates for things, but I let people know if it's been if it's been a year, if it was supposed to have been done in a couple months and it's been a year or it's been 8 months or whatever, I am happy to refund for people. So if I talk to the artist, it's not getting done, I'm happy to refund that. And, when people pay with a PayPal invoice, I have to eat the fees if things get refunded. But, that's the cost of doing business, right? And I did just want to kind of sneak in here for people too that art rep margins are pretty slim. I always joke with people, if you see an art rep making like a ton of money, they're probably doing something doing, unless they won the lottery or something. But, you know, really good reps do this because they're really passionate about it, passionate about the industry, passionate about artists, passionate about collectors. And you can tell that pretty quickly when you work with somebody. I think that it's repping is something that's changing over time. One of the things that Gamal brought up at the beginning, toward the beginning, was kind of art rep, and mentioned art agent. And the world that we're in is pretty much the only art world where people use the term rep, right? In other types of arts, it's always an agent. And I think that repping has been changing over time. It used to just be very much that person was just handling the sales piece. It was very straightforward. You know, I think at minimum you want a rep who understands the market of the artist they're working with, builds relationships there. But I think we're seeing more and more of a push for reps to be more than that. And you know, I know we have some reps who've kind of popped in and out of the chat as well. And I would encourage everybody to think more in that direction and think about how you can do more and how you can, because it's not just about you or the artist you work with, it's about the big picture in the industry as well, and what you can do to be part of that relationship improving, buyers feeling more comfortable and artists feeling more comfortable as well. Gamal, what do you think about artists who don't want to have an art rep, right? That's perfectly fine if they don't want one. So what kind of just general advice would you have for them related to art sales and things like that?
Well, before I answer your specific question, I think it's very helpful to understand from the artist's perspective what an art rep or an agent, what benefit they actually are, what they can actually do. Because if you're an artist, especially if you're a freelance or independent artist, you basically have 4 jobs. One, you have to actually establish yourself with enough skill and structure to be able to do the art in the first place. Then you have to find clients, then you have to collect the fee, and then you have to actually do the work. But out of all 4 of those jobs, you only get paid for one. That's doing the work. If you have a rep or an agent, then half of your jobs you have actually offloaded to someone else. Now all you have to do, and I say all you have to do as if it's easy, and it's not, is establish the skill to do the work and then do the work, because that middle piece, if you have a good rep, it's taken care of. So especially if you are, like Jiggy said, if you are introverted, and if you don't have time to actually go beat the pavement to find clients and actually negotiate contracts and fees and all this other kind of stuff, it helps to actually have that person. If you decide you don't want to have that person, what you have to accept is all the other jobs that go along with you as a ongoing business. That means you have to do the marketing, you have to do the project management, you have to do the distribution, you have to do the sales, you have to do the tax reconciliation, you have to actually make sure the piece gets delivered. The upside to that is you get to keep all the money, but when you're looking at your time and how many pieces you can actually do with all those other unpaid jobs you have to do, it makes more sense if you can find the right rep to actually use that rep. Now, if you can't, or you don't, you have a system and it's pretty good and you can do it yourself, then do it yourself. But understand that there are jobs that need to be done, and if you don't do them, and you don't have a rep, then the jobs will never get done, and you won't even be able to make the art because you won't have that underlying foundation to get the work in the first place.
I think that's a really great point to bring up. I have had artists tell me before that they didn't want to have a rep because of the cut. And I'm just going to be really transparent here because it's something that people aren't sure if they should talk about or whatever. Rep percentages can vary, but I would say the average is 20% for a rep who provides a pretty wraparound service. And I don't mean, getting them work with the publisher like at the agent level. Agents generally get paid more. But for what we look at as a good rep who provides all of the services that we've talked about, the average is 20. There are some people who are a little bit less, some people who are more, some people who provide, a lesser service as far as types of things. So it's a smaller percentage. But so I just want to be transparent about that. But, I like to compare it to, are there services that you have in your life that you pay somebody else to do? Right. And it's what of those things do you have somebody else do because it saves you time so you can use that time to do other things, whether that's mowing your lawn or doing your taxes or any of those things. It really comes down to that, what it's worth to them. I think it's worth it to them alone to not have to have all the boxes in the garage like I do for packing all the artwork, all the special boxes I have to order. So.
Tatiana, I just want to share an anecdote about that part. Funny story. And when Miko Suwayan joined the team, because he was testing, Jiggy, can you try selling this cover? Yeah, sure. Sold it, and then Miko, can I have the piece already? Can you ship it to me? Sorry, I haven't. I need to saw some wood. Like, what do you mean you need to saw wood? Like, I'm the one who's supposed to be. I'm the one who's gonna do that. Oh, really? Okay, fine. I'll join. You're gonna do that from this point on. Okay, I'll join you because he didn't want to do the cutting of the masonite and all that stuff, or shipping or packing. It's a one-stop shop. So he, I thought it was really funny when he said that.
It's a lot. All that shipping and stuff, Casper said in the chat, that's its own whole category. It's a lot. I do offer for all my artists if they want to ship their own art. I do have some who like to do that because they do a lot of shows. So they want to have inventory when they do shows. My big thing is if you're going to ship your own art, I need to make sure you're shipping the art safely. Because I said it's a standard. It's a company standard. So, and then some people go, oh, well, I don't want to, never mind. It's way more than I want to deal with. Here, you deal with the artwork. But yeah, that's funny. Sawing wood. I've seen people use all sorts of materials. There were some questions in the chat I wanted to jump to, but Gamal, I know you were saying some of that kind of in advance of if people work a lot by themselves. So I wanted to make sure to get back to you because I think you had more to talk about.
No, because once you're laying out the process and understanding what parts of the process are going to make you money and what parts of the process are just going to eat up your time and not make you money is the important thing to understand in terms of deciding that you do or you don't want a rep. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is where is your rep and where are your clients? And potentially, because if you're talking about circling back to the Cadence situation, if you're in a place where, if you're in one country A and your rep is in country B, and all of a sudden your rep doesn't pay you or you don't know what's going on, even if you have a contract, it's exponentially more expensive to go after that person because they're in, now you don't have to just deal with the laws of your country. You have to find a lawyer in the other country who actually understands the art business, which is there's not that many of them. And then you have to pay them, and you may or may not have to even go to the place. So figuring out who you're going to work with is why I always kind of go back to that kind of incremental danger room kind of situation. Instead of putting all of your work with one person on an exclusive basis that you don't know and haven't worked with before, I would always suggest building up to that. So if you're not going to get a rep, understand that what you're charging and how you're actually doing things has to account for all of that unpaid time. And if you do use a rep, figure out what it is you're going to do to actually minimize your exposure to that potential cadence situation.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other part of it, when you're talking kind of the flip side of that, when you're talking about where people are located, is looking at where collectors are. So, for example, you all know that I represent Nir Levy, who lives in Israel. He's moving to Canada next week, so that'll be exciting. But he's lived in Israel, born and raised in Israel. And it would be so much harder for him to have to deal with working with clients on a one-on-one basis and then mailing things from Israel. I mean, imagine if you wanted to buy something from him, and let's say you're spending $200 on a page, but now you have to pay for shipping from Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so it's looking at the balance of all of those things as well. So there's two sides to that, and it's finding what works for you, what's important for you, and then start small. If it's somebody you don't know and you're not sure as an artist, just say, okay, let's just start with this project. Mm-hmm. Or why don't we just start with, here, I drew these pieces, let's just start with this. And if somebody says no, then, again, potential red flag, right? Yeah. All right. So Dave Kopecki had a good question in the chat. So everyone is always afraid of asking for a refund because it may burn the bridge. As a rep, if a customer wait time goes long and they want a refund, does it give them a stink? Yeah, I think Jake's on the same page. No, not at all. And to me, the only thing is as long as you're being reasonable, right? Like if it's been 2 weeks and I never told you it was only going to take 2 weeks, and we had an honest discussion about it, and you're putting in what are those, I don't know what they're called, through like PayPal or through your credit card, and all of a sudden I get an email because my funds are all shut down. That's what you don't want to do. That's still, I wouldn't say like burns a bridge, but like that's like not conducive to communication. But if I've been talking with somebody and it's not working out, or they're getting close to that 6-month refund window and they're getting concerned, absolutely. I mean, I want you to feel comfortable. I want everyone to feel comfortable in the situation. And, it doesn't mean you can't get another one. I would just say, like, if next time you want to sign up for a commission and it's with an artist I know it takes a long time, I would probably be like, okay, we need to talk about this up front, because I know this artist is going to take a long time. And does that work for you, or does that not work for you? And so to me, I think that's it. It's just be the communication piece. Do you have anything to add to that, Jiggy?
Yeah, it also depends on the artist. Like Jiggy, I want to open commissions, and if I know the artist takes long, then we need to have a conversation. Like, when are you going to finish? Like, how many are you going to take, and when are you going to finish? And then that's what I'm going to tell the collectors. Mm-hmm. And to answer Dave's, just to expound on Dave's question, like, it's a case-to-case basis. There was a time wherein a collector already approved the layout, and when I sent the image of the finished piece, like, the collector wasn't feeling it. And it was early on during it was the early days of Next, and I took a gamble. Like, you know what? I'll give you the refund. I'm gonna sell the commission to someone else who I think or I know would like it. And this collector ended up being like a loyal one over the years, and it was really building that sense of trust that the collector can have with me and the artists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can always tell when somebody's like bending over backwards. Jiggy always wants to make 100% sure that everyone's treated fairly and gets what it is that they were looking for. I think that can sometimes be a hard call to make, I mean, just reality. It can be
case to case basis.
Yeah. So that ties. Oh, so go ahead, Kamal.
I was just going to suggest that in those situations where you actually have contracts for these commissions, like if there's going to be a commission of a substantial value, then it would make sense to have an an agreement, basically a sales agreement between the art rep and the artist and the actual buyer, so that the delivery dates that you discussed beforehand can get laid out in the contract, so no one's actually waiting. And I thought in the chat I saw somebody said 5 years or 7 years they were waiting for a piece. If the delivery dates are kind of laid out in the contract, then there's a lot less uncertainty about when the piece is going to get done, because if you as the art rep know it's going to take this artist 9 months to a year, then you just put that in the contract, and if the buyer accepts that, then there's no problem. And if you know another artist who you say is more efficient, it's going to take 2 months, then you put that into that contract. The other piece that you could put into these agreements, especially if, like Jiggy said, when the final product comes, the buyer no longer wants it, you could build in what's called a kill fee, which is a lot less ominous than it sounds. It's basically the buyer will pay for the time the artist actually took to create the work, but not the full amount because they did not accept the work, which then, and also built into that contract, will say that if you don't accept the work, you pay the kill fee and I can go sell it to somebody else. So a lot of the communication and the comfort level and the reassurance that people need on both sides, a lot of that's the point of the contract. The contract is not so that you could take somebody to court and sue them, because that's a waste of time and money, as we pointed out. But it actually just lays out what everyone expects on both sides in a way that's very clear before the artist ever starts doing anything, so everybody's more comfortable.
No, I think that's a great thing to bring up. And I think that, Dave, your question with the timelines and refunds, I think the only time that it would probably be a bridge burner would be if you signed a contract saying that you knew this commission would take, 1 to 2 years, and you signed that and you were okay with it. And then after 6 months, you demanded a refund. That could be a problem. Dave is very reasonable. He is not, in case anybody was wondering, if you don't know Dave, Dave's great. Dave's not out there trying to just get refunds on stuff. He's very easy to work with.
But in that case, though, if the buyer signed a contract saying that they will wait a year to get the piece, and then they want a refund after 6 months, you could build in mechanisms in the contract that actually allow for that. However, him demanding a refund is a breach of the contract. And you don't have to give him his money back, because that's not what the contract says. The contract says a year, you agree to a year, you come back in 6 months, you want your cash, then we're gonna need some money because you just breached the contract.
Yeah.
Breaching contracts actually works both ways. The buyer and the artist or the art rep can breach the contract depending on how it's set up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's, I think it's always good for people to remember that's designed, again, it's designed to protect everybody. That's what it's there for. Alberto had a question about reps continuing to accept commissions for their artists if they know they have a backlog for longer than a year. I don't do that, period. And I know Jiggy doesn't either. He's shaking his head. There's a lot of things with that. Optics are bad, all that other kind of stuff. It's one thing if you're taking, commissions for a show or something, but beyond that, they shouldn't do that. I mean, I'm just going to say that they shouldn't do that. If you choose to continue to work with that person, knowing that they do things like that, that is your choice and your comfort level. And now you have all these tips from Gamal and how to approach some of those things, and maybe things to offer to protect yourself if you're going to be working with this person. But, without knowing the entire situation, just looking at what you're saying there, generally speaking, that is not a good business practice in general.
The business practice that might actually alleviate the situation is simply developing something along the lines of a waiting list.
Yep.
Like my artist can't do this piece within the next 12 to 16 months, but give me your name and contact information. We put you on the waiting list. It's first come, first serve. And when the backlog starts to free up, I'll reach out, see if you're still interested. The buyer doesn't have to sign the contract. Your artist doesn't have to put more on their plate, but you don't necessarily, the sale doesn't just walk out the door. You could actually reach out later and kind of make sure that, and see if there's still interest.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I do. If people ask, oh, I see this artist doesn't have commissions open. Can you, let me know? Then I'll tell them, well, here's their most recent rates. Again, I can't guarantee those will be the rates next time, but these are the most recent rates. I'm happy to put you on the waiting list. And when we're able to open the commission list, I email everybody on the list 1 day in advance of opening the list publicly. And then that way I don't have to chase people down. They've been contacted. If they want it, they reach out. And if they don't, then they don't.
That actually makes more sense than first come, first serve. You are correct.
I just figure it's it's a nice gesture. How do you handle those types of situations, Jiggy?
It depends also. Like there's a waiting list. Before I open the new list, I email like artist is done with the current spots. If you're still interested, we can still give you the same rate. Can't guarantee the next one, but if you're interested, let me know. And then some will say yes, some will say no. Like they change their mind. It's fine. No biggie.
Yeah. All right. Next question. This is a great question. I'll just give a little bit of the history here on. It's asking about how artists keep their art from major publishers. Before Neal Adams, they didn't. Neal Adams is really the pioneer who changed the industry entirely. Before Neal and his fight for artists to get their art back, by and large, artists just submitted their art to the publisher, and that was it. Some of the art from before that time, people got in their collections by digging through dumpsters behind publishers. That being said, generally speaking, that is part of the contract when you sign up with the company. If you're not doing work for yourself but doing it for a third party, that's generally written in there. With my boyfriend Joe being an inker, one of the things that's usually written in for him is the standard is kind of a 2/3, 1/3. So if the penciler and inker are two different artists, the penciler gets 2/3 of the original art back, the inker gets 1/3 of the art back, and that's best practice should always be written in. Kamal, do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, on every level, it doesn't matter whether it's Marvel or DC or IDW or Mad Cave or even just publishers who are working through like the crowdfunding space or the webtoon space, you always negotiate who is going to actually have ownership and control of the original art in the contract. And a lot of times the publisher will allow the artist to keep the original art and then go off and sell it. A lot of times the stipulation is you can't sell the art before the actual book comes out, just because there may be spoilers in the actual art, and if you just let it out that Phoenix dies at the end of X-Men 137, now you've killed it, and nobody's excited anymore.
Spoilers, come on.
Oh yeah, spoilers for X-Men 137. Whatever. Anyway, yeah, so it's usually a timing thing, and there's, because of the way technology has evolved, there's usually stipulation in the contract says that you can't make NFTs from the art, you can't use it for blockchain or Bitcoin or this, that, and the third. But in most cases, because a lot of the final files are all uploaded to like Dropbox or something digitally anyway, you get to keep the original art as long as you can sell it as long as you actually abide by certain standards that do not undermine the business practice or the publishing schedule of the publisher. Yes, Joseph, Gene dies. I'm so sorry that I let you know.
There's a calf related question here, and I wanted to answer this, Marcus. Yes, The mystery sketches have a time limit. Whenever anybody signs up to do mystery sketches through CAF, whether it's a rep or an artist, that's all in the paperwork and things that they're reading, and they understand that. That being said, things are sometimes a little bit late, but again, that's a communication piece. But we look very much at who gets things done on time and who doesn't. And if somebody is like notoriously late, then we don't have to invite them back to do mystery sketches again. But yes, there is a time limit. It's we ask them to usually be done, a couple weeks after whatever that Comic Art Live is.
Weeks, not days. we were given then. I'm kidding.
Yeah. And then of course we ask people to be patient for things like international shipping, right? If that's if need be. And Casper put in here. Is it Casper that put in here? Oh no, sorry. I was looking at somebody else's comments. I'm like going through the comments to see if there's responses to stuff. Oh, thank you, Dave. That was nice.
Thank you, Dave. Marcus, for us, Bill really wants to do the unboxing, so we want to do that also. So I tell the team that you need to finish by this time, or else you won't be part of the unboxing. So everyone will, all the artists will, okay, we'll finish it by this time.
Tatiana, Nick has a AI question that I think we kind of have to answer.
Sure. Sorry, I'm scrolling down
to 1016.
It's on the recent one.
There we go. I just highlighted Nick's previous comment, which was how happy he was as an attorney in this type of conversation. As we know, a lot of collectors are attorneys. So yes, Gamal is the best. We love Gamal. So yeah, let's talk about AI. So Gamal, jump right in.
Well, first, you have to take all of the things that I'm saying about AI with the caveat that a lot of the cases that are actually going to be used to determine the legal status of AI are still working their way through the courts. So everything that I say could easily change tomorrow. And that every year at New York Comic Con, we actually have a special course for attorneys who want to be in the comic book space, and we teach them about the impact of AI on comics in general. What is happening at this point is that you have different strata of publishers and artists and everybody else. There's one set of publishers who, because they are very pro-artist and pro-creator, will not sign on any artists who actually use AI in their work, and they will not train any large language models with an artist's work to actually generate their style. The only thing that they try to protect themselves with is they will not be held liable if something like Midjourney or ChatGPT adds their work to the model after it's released in marketing or after the issue comes out, because they don't have any control over that. Depending on how much leverage you have in the industry and depending on the publisher you're working with, as an artist, you can build things into your contract that say your art will not be used in large language models. However, if you are working on a freelance basis, and if there's nothing specific in your contract that says your work cannot be used in AI, I am going to predict, let's say you're doing work for DC, and you've been doing work for DC for 5-10 years, and all of a sudden DC decides they're going to come out with their own AI app, make your own comics using all of our artwork, pay us a monthly fee, blah, blah, blah. Your artwork will be used in there. Because if you read the freelance agreement and understand it, the way the freelance contract works in comics, you did not create that art. Because you were commissioned to create that art on behalf of DC. DC is actually the legal owner of that art, and you don't have any right to say what happens to the art afterward. Because this is not Europe, you do not have moral rights, and you cannot actually dictate what happens to the artwork afterward. having said that, even if you're an artist coming up now, you're fairly prominent, depending on the company you work with, you still may not have enough leverage to keep your art out of those models. And keep in mind, if you draw in a particular style, as all artists do, your style is not intellectual property. What you create in your style is intellectual property, but you cannot protect. Like if somebody puts Jim Lee's name into Midjourney, there's nothing Jim Lee can do about it at this point. I believe that there's a legal theory, it's called name, image, and likeness, that you could theoretically push to have a case where artists and their names and everything else are blocked from large language models, so that a artist cannot have their livelihood co-opted by Midjourney or anything else, simply because people will go to Midjourney instead of getting a commission. That is a progressive legal theory, and it has not been tried yet. So in a nutshell, if you're working freelance and you're working for a big company, you do not, it's very little that you can do to protect yourself against having your stuff put into large language models in AI. If you're working with smaller publishers or more creative-friendly publishers, they will definitely do that, because I have quite a few clients. They ask me to build those mechanisms into the contracts, primarily because the Copyright Office, which actually controls who owns what in terms of intellectual property, has said that if you create art with a large language model or AI, then you cannot have a copyright in that because you didn't make it. Copyright, actually, you have to have a human author. That is the way it's written into the law, and the way they said it is, if you use prompts, it doesn't matter how many prompts you used or how many times you did it, you didn't do it. So because these publishers need to have things that they own and they can sell, they don't want you giving them something that they can't have a copyright to, which is why you can't use it. You can't use AI in your work, but if once they get it and it's theirs, they can do what they want.
I have a question for you, Gamal.
Yes.
For artists or small companies who are using, things like the Kickstarter model, you and I talked a little bit about Kickstarter and we talked on the phone. Do you know how the AI laws interact with that? Like if I have my book and I'm doing a Kickstarter and I have all of my images and other things, I know there's been issues with social media and images that people put up in social media. Do you know, are there any protections, or has that been discussed on platforms like Kickstarter?
I don't believe Kickstarter actually because there is what they call a public benefit company. They do not attempt, outside of their even like things like not safe for work or anything like that, they do not try to dictate what things go on the platform or how those things are made. So if a lot of the policing of AI and anti-AI stuff within the comic book space in crowdfunding is within the community itself, because there's a lot of creators and publishers and buyers who simply do not want AI stuff in their comics. But there is a contingent of comic book creators and comic book readers and publishers who are actually, one of the selling points of their book is that, look, I made this whole thing with AI. And some people are very excited about that, in the same way that people are excited about, McDonald's chicken nuggets, knowing there's no chicken in there, but they still want it, so they get it. This is the same concept. You can create art with AI that can get put into comics. Like there are some artists who are using AI for backgrounds, where they actually make the principal image or the main image in the panel is done by a human, but they make one tree, they tell Midjourney, make all the trees, make it the afternoon, make it snowing, and then they have a background. Some people, there are various lines that people are or are not willing to cross when it comes to AI. Like for instance, some people will not accept even a script that they think it has been manipulated by AI. not realizing that Grammarly is an AI system, so you don't want me to spell check it now. So there's a where you actually fall in the AI spectrum goes down to the individual person, but Kickstarter, to the best of my knowledge, and other systems like Indiegogo and Zoop and anything like that, they're not telling people they can't distribute comics using AI.
What about the flip side of I'm an artist, I do all my work traditionally, I'm doing a Kickstarter for a book, and I'm worried that my images are going to get pulled to use in some of those AI systems, like for teaching those systems?
Mm-hmm. There are the problem with there's a there are several technical solutions that are embedded into files that people are using to try to sabotage and undermine large language models. The problem is if somebody, like let's say in this example, I make a book completely without AI, I make it a traditional way. I put the book on Kickstarter, I sell print copies of the book, you get a print copy, and then you just scan it and you upload it to a large language model. There's really nothing that I can do about that because a lot of the technical solutions, to the extent that I understand them, because I don't know coding, that's actually protecting the digital file when you upload the digital file to something like social media or anything like that. Once you you print it and you put it in the book and then you send the book to your Kickstarter backer, you don't really have any control over what they do with it. If they put it on a large language model, well, that's it. It's done.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It can happen kind of anywhere along that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Jiggy and Gamal, do either of you have anything else that you want to talk about today? I will throw that out to the chat. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in there.
Apart from having chicken nuggets for lunch, then I'm okay already.
Well, I will second the idea that the Wendy's spicy chicken nuggets are in fact the best chicken nuggets. But I do think as artists and reps and buyers, I would strongly recommend, even though it sounds like a complicated and daunting and expensive process, it really is not, to get a contract for the work that you're doing. You do not have to reinvent the wheel every time you sell a piece or do a commission or anything like that. You could have a contract that is fairly standard to your business model where you could just plug in the delivery dates, the price, what you're delivering, and things like that, so that you have peace of mind, your rep has peace of mind, and your buyer has peace of mind going forward. I think the more transparency and upfront kind of explanation about what's going on in this process will actually make everyone more comfortable with the process and get more people to actually collect art and order commissions and things like that, because standardization and security will make everyone more comfortable in actually like going out there and doing it.
And I think also I would note with people that contracts are things that you can revisit and change over time. You might go into a working relationship with somebody with a certain expectation, and then maybe over time you realize that things need to be a little bit different. I mean, those types of things can always be renegotiated and updated and changed. So yes, it's a piece of paper. Yes, that's, it is binding in that way, but it doesn't mean that it's not something that can ever be updated or changed to something else.
Exactly.
I'm looking at questions. This is an interesting one. Prints of OA pages. The answer completely depends on the situation. Nobody but the publisher has the right to make those prints. And I've seen this happen before where people go, well, I own the original art and I paid $10,000 for it, so I'm allowed to make a print of it. No, you're not. Unless you bought, let's say you bought a piece from an artist that was from their personal intellectual property, and as part of that purchase, you negotiated the right to make X, Y, and Z with it, that would be the only time. But generally speaking, when you're working with an art rep, when you're buying a piece of art, unless it specifically says and you've agreed upon there being an additional layer to that, all you are buying is the physical artwork. You do not get any of the rights to anything else. And if it's any of the big, big two, I guarantee you don't have any of the rights to that.
Yeah, because in those situations, you are buying the finished art piece. You are not buying the copyright,
Yeah.
which is literally the right to make a copy. So unless you bought the copyright, which is fine, I'm sure Marvel will sell you the copyright to Spider-Man if you have it. Then you can't make copies. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, I've a couple of my artists will do digital commissions if clients want digital commissions. And I always, all the rules are on my website, but I always just double check with people when people are getting a digital commission. I just want to make sure that that all you're getting is you're getting the image. You can't use that for any sort of publication or anything. And if you want to get a piece of art drawn that you're going to use for something, like let's say it's your personal character, right? We get people like, oh, it's my D&D character, it's whatever. If you want to be able to use that to make t-shirts or whatever it is that you want, we'll just negotiate that up front. And I usually just talk with my artists because there's different rates. There's the I'm doing work for you that you're going to publish and print in places rate, which is like what they charge to the publisher. And then there's the original art rate, which is usually what the collector gets charged. Well, sometimes it's both of those. So if somebody says, I want to commission you to draw my original character, and then I'm going to use that art and I'm going to make t-shirts. You can totally do that. You just know that it's going to cost more than just buying the original art because you're paying for publication. Now, if they want that, but you want it to be Daredevil, then you can't do that because the artist does not have they cannot give you the right to it.
Mm-hmm. And you can set up, depending on how your contract is set up. If someone wants to be able to make prints or copies or t-shirts or whatever, you could actually build that into the contract. All you have to do is give the artist and the art rep a royalty rate, which means you would then have to give them an accounting statement every quarter, which then give them royalties once you actually cross a certain threshold. And if you didn't do it, then they could audit you. And if that sounds too complicated, then you don't really want the ability to make the prints, because what you're asking for is a reproduction license. We could do it. We could, in contracts, a lot of people think there are these things that are like chiseled on stone tablets that can never be changed. That's not true. We can put anything in the contract as long as it's not illegal. It just depends on what it is that both sides want and what it is both sides are willing to do to get what they want. That's all.
And just general information for people. I'm not going to bring all the questions up because then we can go down a rabbit hole. But when you look at like artist edition books or artists who make different art books and sketchbooks, there are ways to legally do all of those things. And so, for example, like Marvel, if you're an artist who's worked with Marvel and so you get a lot of Marvel commissions and you want to make a Marvel art book, you can work with Marvel and then they have a licensing fee and an agreement. And then also that agreement includes like you can't put things in that book that they wouldn't approve of, like nudity and stuff like that. But you can pay the fee to be able to do that book legally. There are people who do them without getting the going through the proper channels. They're taking a risk. They're not supposed to be doing that. But there are proper channels to do that through. The same thing with artist edition books. That can be more complicated depending on the situation, but there are like legal channels and things to go through. I know some people have been reached out. Hey, I saw you own this and this page for this book. Can you send us a high-res scan? I just always ask, well, what is it for? Tell me a little bit about the project. Because to me, anyway, as a collector, the owner of that original art piece, it's my responsibility. I'm the steward of the safety of that image. I've had people ask me for high-res scans of stuff, and I really shy away from it unless they can tell me exactly what it's for, because people can do a lot of things they shouldn't be doing with a high-res scan of stuff. But there's a lot of great situations. Those large print master's books are a great example for people to be able to enjoy that work at the size that it was done. Those can be huge projects, and there are ways to do it where everybody gets, you know, the royalties and everything that they're supposed to. Well, Jiggy, Gamal, it has been amazing having you two on, having your perspectives and your expertise and stories. Thank you to everyone in the chat for coming today. This show's a little different, and Aranga saying in the chat that this was like his favorite show. Just that right there, boom, right? Aranga's a collector and an artist, a phenomenal artist, and that's the feedback that we wanted right there. So I already feel like we won because Aranga said so. So thank you all for joining today. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. And I hope you all have a great week.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.
Remember, if you want the information about the small claims, just people can reach out.
Yeah, we'll have everything down in the info right below the video on YouTube, so you can find everything there. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a good night.